What up, world, and welcome to another episode of Black Nerd Fridays. I'm your host, Neal, and of course, I got the whole squad, the crew. Assemble the crew. We're here. It's Suds. It's Mr. Refine. It's crazy. It's perfect blue. Something that if you enjoy psychological thrillers, the detective aspect of like who really is this and who really is that, this is a show you must see. Suds, what's going on with you?
And it is great to be back. I know I was gone for a while, but it feels good to be back with my
Feels
co-host.
good to be home, baby.
I know it feels good. It always feels good to be with you guys. So I'm excited to talk about this. This was one that I recommended, but I'm excited to see what you guys think about this classic. So we'll see.
Mr. Refine, what's going on with you?
Man, it's Friday. You know how I do it, man. I'm ready to get into it. I'm excited. We all back together as a crew. We about to have a good conversation about as she said, classic movie. So let's do our thing like we always do.
And before we get into it, man, shout out to the Lost Children of Andromeda. Definitely got these joints. So you mean the 2052.
Beautiful.
Jason, what up? You know what I mean? I'm telling you, when I get through at least one of these joints, we come in, and then you got the other one, Zomas. You know, this is nice.
Just the name alone is just cool.
And then the front, this thing is fire. I mean, that looked like Queen Beryl from Sailor Moon out here almost. With a little bit of medieval flair to it. So you know how I get down. Let me go a bit back, and you know what we do here in Black Nerd Fridays, not only just anime, comics, movies, sci-fi, and more, but we also love what? Craft beer. So, Suds, what you drinking?
Well, I mean, I could have done my plug of the beer that I released, but I thought I'd keep on track with themes like I always do. And I did. I'm getting Running Off Silver. Now, you may say to yourself, but I thought it was called Perfect Blue. Well, the reason why I picked Running Off Silver is because, one, this is supposed to be an imperial stout made with marshmallows, almonds, and cocoa nibs, right? Barrel aged, which means it's going to be dark. And this movie was dark. And also, there was a lot of running happening in this, running from where she was, the main character was trying to go from one thing to another, running from the truth, running from her mental state. So I thought this might be actually pretty good to follow up on or to drink. But I would look at, let's see, what is it? This was brewed in Queens, so I gotta get my New York.
Yeah, Fanbag got some
especially after the verses that we had, which was like phenomenal. Which, by the way, if anybody thought this step was gonna win that, I don't know what y'all were thinking. But I don't know what the percent. Oh, 12%, just like my beer.
Now you're a part of that high ABV life. That's what I'm talking about.
So that's my
about beer. Time. No, is that all you get? That's all you doing today?
It's 12%, baby. You got to start off. We're going to get into some heavy stuff, man. You got to start off smooth because we might be talking too much, and I don't want beer getting warm. Just saying.
You need
that one warm.
That's right. That's what I'm talking about, Mr. Refine. What you drinking?
Yo, and it's kind of crazy because I'm doing the exact opposite. Like, this is a classic movie, so I'm going with something light because since this was such a dark movie, and Suds always kills her. She always has a perfect explanation as to what's going on. Man, I'm taking it simple and easy right now. Now, Ruby Red, don't get it twisted. I got some fire to break out, but I ain't breaking it out until after I'm done because I got some other things I got to do after. But I wanted to take it easy, man. I had that stuff weighing on my mind. It was a heavy movie. It was a lot to digest, and this is why me and we was all talking behind the scenes. So I'm taking it easy with this coach, but my mind gonna be clear and concise when I'm answering these questions tonight.
That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So,
and he got blue in a can.
Suds didn't want to do it, but I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? If you don't know, KinkySudz has her own beer. Come on, like what? What are you talking about? Shout out to Oak Park Brewing Company out here in Sacramento, California. This is a 12.1 ABV lemon cielo inspired ale. Okay, this thing when you see that lemon and that cherry, and you see Scarlet, the name of the beer. Okay, Scarlet. That is that's what it is. It's definitely hidden. Definitely something that you wouldn't think is 12%. It'll get you in trouble, but I still had 2.5.
I need it in my life too.
Yeah, so I got that.
Don't worry, I got you. I got
But
you.
you already know I had to do it. So and then I got this Mega Mouth stout from Alameda Island Brewing Company. This is a 11% stout. Okay, this thing is nice. I had it as a tryout. I was like, I got to hold this until Friday. And then another Alameda Island Fox and Ham. Okay, this is a 9.5% ABV Imperial IPA. So definitely gonna crack that open last. But I'm probably gonna start off with the stout because it's dark, and then we're gonna work our way. We're gonna work our way up from 11 to 12, and then we're gonna go down to the 9.5. We crazy out here.
He peaked and then he's like, we peak and come back.
And we got the shirts, you know what I'm saying? The merch, we working on it. You interested, hit us up. You already know what's going on. And I'm gonna just get into it. We're gonna go from as we normally do. We're gonna start with our good, bad, and ugly. We got a lot of questions, so it's gonna be like rapid fire with our opinions. We're gonna be dropping bombs. But before we do that, real quick, Perfect Blue is about Kaguro. I don't even know how to pronounce her name correctly. Kagori Mima. She is a part of a pop idol group called Cham, which I was like, maybe it's short for something. That group is popular. Actually, the movie starts off, them being at like pretty much like an open day where they got like the Power Rangers on one end of the park, and then they got the pop idol group on the other end. You see a whole bunch of nothing but guys at the in the audience. But it really just goes. This movie really focuses on Mima. It focuses on and a lot of when you watch anime in the early 90s, early 2000s, it really talks about a lot of the Japanese people who are not from Tokyo. So they live outside of Tokyo, they farmland or just small villages, and then they come into Tokyo go to university. They want to be stars. They want to do something else to make more money. And this really goes down this line of Mima and her aspect of wanting to be outside of a pop idol. She wanted to be more. She's very talented. And the agency that she's with, they know that they want to they want to push her to get to something more than that, because actually a lot of the sales of pop idols at the time, and this movie was in 1998, the idol sales were going down. The agency wanted to do something different. They thought she was a star. A lot of people liked her. So it went from there, and you just go through a downward spiral of choices and decisions she made. And then you just got that person in the background. The person who you think's the antagonist is not the antagonist. And it's great. So let's jump into that good, bad, and the ugly. And I'm going to start off since she's here. Suds, kick it off with your good.
Well, I think
I messed up.
I'm very, I was like, man, my beard looks amazing.
I was looking at your beer. Hold on, real quick. I was looking at the beer. I was about to pick up the beer, and then I just hit the button. I'm so used to Suds being at the end. I messed up. Go ahead, Suds. You in the middle.
Totally fine. It's cool. The good for me, I think, was just this storytelling and a lot of the cinematography that was in it. I mean, this is like one of those movies that came out around the same time as Ghost in the Shell. So there were a lot of elements during that time in the late 90s that you would see in these type of films, right? I think the other thing for me is just this idea that you have a young girl who wants to step out of this persona that she has. And I think a lot of us who have built a brand or in the process of building a brand, and we see a lot of older brands that try to brand themselves, is really trying to, kind of get out of that shell that you've had before, right? So people have always associated you with this one thing, and you go to rebrand, that can really cause a lot of people to kind of fall off or maybe even pick up new people. But I think it's just this idea that although you're rebranding yourself, there's still a part of you that, that was a part of you, right? So you're trying to always find a way to, say that I'm growing, I'm evolving. I'm not, kind of like ignoring this old part of me, but I do want to move into something else. So I thought that was really interesting, seeing how she wants to move in this direction, but there were so many other forces that were kind of going against that, right? And making her second guess herself. So I think that part of it I thought was really interesting. And like you said, how they set up the stage really well, that you think it's just one person who's really the one who's, causing all of her problems, but in actuality, it's someone else. So I think that in itself, I thought was really beautifully done. I think that there were hints throughout if you were really paying attention, but overall, I thought that was just like a beautiful. There are some dark parts to it. Don't get me wrong, which we'll get into later. But I do
Yes.
think that storytelling that they did, I think, was really interesting to kind of push this boundaries of what's real, what's not, and how do you evolve without losing a part of yourself.
Mr. Refine, before I go, my bad.
No,
Cheers to everybody. You know what I mean? Shout out to that high ABV life. What up, Brick?
Shout out to the low ABV life today.
Yeah,
all right.
you got the dark joint. I got the dark joint. You know, it's all good. Mr. Refine, go ahead. Talk your talk.
Listen, I'm not going to be as eloquent as my sister was just now, but I'm going to say this. When I watched that movie, it was very nostalgic. I loved the animation on there, but I really loved watching them walk around with CD players, had the old school headphones and stuff like that. That right there brought me back to a certain time frame. And when I thought about it, it reminded me of psychological thrillers during that time frame in the 90s, whether it be Silence of the Lambs, whether it be Along Came a Spider. It just brings you in that certain mind state. And this specific movie, it did that for me. So I was in love with it. I liked seeing the old school first generation Mac, like just everything about it brought me to a certain mental space, and I enjoyed it thoroughly, the whole thing. And like I said, I had a lot of questions because it was a lot of stuff going on. And to be honest with you, I'm gonna have to watch that joint again because there's some things that I probably pick up differently now after watching this.
Right? You're like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I was so focused on Mima and just the interactions of herself and what she was going through, and that's really my good is how the director of this anime, the creator, really focuses heavily on decision making that Mima does, and how even though she portrays herself in one image to her agency and to the people around her, on the other hand, it's this person that's like very conservative and wants to just do something to make herself feel more than just I'm just a singer. And it's a lot of things in the show that really exacerbate just the psyche that she's in when she's doing things to be different, and to not be just what everybody wants her to be or protect her and say she's a pop idol and we should keep her safe when she wants to step out and take risks. And those risks, calculated or not calculated, had an effect on her that she had to deal with. And I love how the director and the creator really just focused on her. You had a lot of other outside noise, but it was really her situation that really made it happen. So with that, Suds, let's you know what? Let's switch it up. Mr. Refine, let's go into your bad.
My bad, honestly, was watching the Stalker. Something about him was off to me, and I know we're gonna kind of get in details with him. But I really didn't like him. I hated the fact of the way he looked, like he was very disfigured. And I don't know if that was something that actually happened to him physically, or if he was born with an physical defect. But he was definitely way off, even the distortion and stuff of his eyes. So I didn't like how they, kept kind of putting him in the spotlight and made it seem a certain way. And I'm gonna kind of keep my opinion on it. But I didn't like him, and I think that personally, it made you believe something else, but in reality, this didn't happen. So that was my bad on that. It wasn't that really crazy because the movie was good. It was just way too good.
Suds, what was your bad?
That part was part of my ugly, and I'll explain a little bit more with that. Bad, though, I would have to say how fragile her mental state was. To me, it was like I've noticed in a lot of female characters when it comes to these type of psychological thrillers, she's not very strong. And I feel that they really play on that a lot, even with us now being, damn near 30 years past this movie, right? It was really just how fragile she was. And there was really no one there to kind of help her, or at least kind of keep her, kind of grounded in reality. That to me, I think was a little troublesome, because when you think about celebrities as a whole, or when you think about some of these pop stars, which you really hear on like K-pop, how they're really getting pushed to their limits, right? They have to keep up a certain persona. And so I think that this idea that her growing, because we hear about this when you look at child stars that come out of Disney and how they do this major shift to say, hey, look at me, and how they break because of all the pressures that are going on with that, right? And even Kanye just said recently about, be careful of what you let your kids watch, right? The media really puts in these subliminal messages. And you hear a lot of stars that have come out and said that, they had a lot of things happen to them behind the scenes that really made them question, do I even want to still be here, right? So he said you hear all these things that are happening, and I think they did a good job in trying to highlight that. But it was just very sad to see in my eyes, just the fact of she really had no one. It was sad to watch. And just the fact that even with her knowing what she wanted to do, she wasn't strong enough to kind of keep herself going, right? So to me, that was my bad with that. And now I'll save my other parts of the ugly.
Man, that's crazy. Because I really don't have a bad, which is a surprise to me, but I really just didn't have a bad. Like I thoroughly enjoyed what was going on. I do agree with the Suds that the aspect of Mima and her reluctancy to really either seek help or want to isolate herself too, and that's something that I pose in the question. She wanted to not be. She didn't want to be wrong. I think it was even one scene, and maybe I got this wrong, where her mother called or something like that, and she finally picked up, had a quick conversation with her, but it was more so of like her mom was just so focused on her being the star. So I really think it was more of her not being able to just be Mima. Krigo. Thank you. I always want to say it, try to say it the right way. Krigo, Mima. She wanted to be that with especially with her mom, and I could tell that conversation was really quick. So, I mean, I really don't have a bad. So I'm gonna just let Suds going straight into the ugly, because my ugly is pretty plain. But let's go ahead and go with Suds.
So I'd have to say one of the things I do want to build upon is what Mr. Refine himself had said, where it's about the drawing of the stalker. To me, I've noticed, and anytime they try to show any type of bad guy or some guy who's a stalker in a movie, they really had them look, like you said, disfigured or some type of like ugliness to them. I get what you're trying to portray, but you can do that ugly side of them through their actions, not necessarily through what they look like. And so for me, I've noticed that when you talk about, how certain types of characters are portrayed, it's like when you think about the Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? Or Notre Dame, right? How he was portrayed in such a way where he was just always kind of picked on because he was disfigured. And you could tell that this guy really lived an isolated life, right? But it was also just, and he was because of that isolated life, he really focused in on her because he felt that there was something there, right? So he really became like kind of blinders on her. But I do think that some of the drawing styles of certain characters, even with her friend Rumi, who we'll talk about a little bit later.
Not her friend, her part of the agency, but go ahead.
Part of the agency, but I think she viewed her as a friend because they would have some heart-to-hearts, right?
That's true.
But I do think that sometimes they would also, and you notice with her drawing as well, she was kind of always in the background. She was a little overweight, right? And she wasn't really listened to. No one really listened to her. So I felt as though they really were playing up on these stereotypes and tropes that to me, I'm like, I get it. It was in the 90s, but we still see that type of stuff happening in movies today and shows today. So to me, I felt that part was ugly. I think the other thing that was really ugly for me was just this idea that in order for her to break out of being a pop star into a movie star, that they kept pushing the boundaries of what she was comfortable with. And we all know what scenes we're talking about. So like the photographer.
Yeah, that was after the other scene.
Right. And I'm saying, so we already know with that, and we've heard so many stories, right, with photographers, and like you see that she's not comfortable, but they're like, oh, it's going to be edgy, and all this is plastered out like full on, and so there's nothing that she can hide anymore, right? And then they also pushed this whole scene on her where they had to do multiple retakes. And I think the craziest thing about it for me in that scene where they were, simulating a rape scene is that the guy who was doing the act kept saying, "I'm so sorry." Right? Like he even knew that the scene was messed up. Yeah. But they're doing it for a paycheck. And so she has to sit here and say and pretend that she's comfortable with it. So I think in this case, and I've heard of other stories too, where you have female actresses who you know, have gone on and done a movie, and there were just certain scenes that they would do, and they said they just felt so dirty afterwards, right? So, you know, these type of scenes of, you know, there's been movies that have implied that rape has happened, but they don't actually show the act.
Exactly. I'm
But
glad
the
you
fact that you have a lot of movies that feel as though we have to be edgy, and they do these long scenes, like one movie in particular, Irreversible, which was like had one of the longest rape scenes I think in history of 9 minutes. It was like, what was even the point in doing that, right? Like you can already kind of set up the scene. You don't need to actually show it.
Yeah.
So for me, that was part of the ugly part. But I felt as though at that point they had pushed her to such a point that she was like, "Why? I feel like I have to in order to be a movie star, right? That's the only way people are going to take me seriously." And to me, I was like, "Well, why must she go to great lengths to be taken seriously?" And we hear that a lot when it comes to minorities, to women, that you have to go to extra lengths to even be considered serious or to be considered worthy of being in those spaces. So to me, that was a part for me that was really ugly.
To answer that question, or at least from my perspective, it was oh, you're a pop idol. You can't deal with difference. You can't deal with risk. You can't deal with uncomfortability. And I'm glad you mentioned that with Black people of color, and Black women in particular, of like Black people in particular, of like, is everything going to be are you going to be sensitive to every comment, or is everything going to be a issue and things of that nature? So I really got that, especially on the photography scene, after she literally, as an actress, did a rape scene, and she had to deal with that again in her isolation. But
Still
then
bearing herself.
go to the photographer, and the photographer was like, "Oh yeah," but he didn't say that he was going to show all of those. He was just like, "These are just pictures that we're taking." And so when she saw how he laid her out, almost, I mean, not almost, as a Playboy magazine, then she lost it. And it was like, because that's not what he said. And a lot of not a lot of female not only actresses but models are very wary to this day of photographers, because photographers make you feel comfortable because they're attempting to get a shot. But if you don't know if you don't know them, or you don't have control of and I don't know exactly what they call the negatives, or the actual, all the photos, to look and see which ones you want placed. It's happened to a lot of people. It's happened to a lot of big entertainers, and especially women. And I'm definitely glad that you mentioned that. So, Ren, Mr. Refine, what was your ugly?
I'm gonna kind of jump off what y'all was saying too, but excuse me. More so, watching it, I kind of got the idea of how she was easily influenced by social media, pretty much, which wasn't social media at the time.
At that time, yep.
Good call. Having a page, and a page that she didn't create, but it was a page about her, and she was influenced by the comments on there, and how we are ourselves drawn into that. Just like Sudz was saying, Kanye West was like, be careful of what you let your kids watch. The same thing applies to adults. How much internet, social media stuff can you deal with before you decide, let me check myself out and deal with reality? Because she was so lost in that she eventually started to have issues, which we're going to kind of expound on later. But watching it, it just related currently to society so much. None of that stuff changes. The things that these pop idols, etc., go through, they go through it. They're still normal people. They go through the same issues we do. But the difference is they're fighting with trying to keep this fame up. And if one person tells them something negative, that really bothers them, especially depending on the person. So I thought that's very brutal, but I also understood the honesty of it. And I definitely think that it's something that we need to talk about and discuss more, just as a people, and something that we go through every day, because the everyday person is looking at their Instagram, their Facebook, and like, oh, this person is not liking my stuff. They feel away. So they got into it, and I thought that was ugly, but it was real.
Yeah.
Man, y'all both did some wonderful uglies. Made my ugly just feel like it ain't nothing.
We're the sandwich. Don't worry.
Yeah. But no, my ugly was just really focused on how the men and the agency treated these pop idols, these women, like, for the comments of like, oh, once they're not a pop idol, now they're out here doing hoe shit and slutty and being slutty. And it's like, wow. It's like these are the same guys, the fans, and I mean, hence the title of our review today. I mean, how fans can create the perfect. I mean, create the perfect entertainer. It's like you're putting this person on a pedestal but they're still human to Mr. Refine's point. And you act like you have not been through things or no. And you hear that so many times. What I would have done, and I'm like, hindsight is 20/20, and when you're outside and when you're on the outside looking in, it's very easy. And on top of that, the way that she was introduced to this this internet, not the internet, but introduced to the chat room, introduced to the chat room, and how she really didn't. Again, this is 98, so like, I mean, we're in the last generation before the internet became like where you didn't have to worry about dial up and stuff like that. Like, this is something where she was like, "What is? I don't even know what you're talking about. What is this chat room?" And so that was also another thing because she is not experienced with this, but she has a computer at home. But it was more so to do like Word documents or something of that nature.
And barely even then, she's still
now she's going into a chat room and like what? And this is all unfiltered. So this is social media. Like, this is just even rawer than social media, because social media has an algorithm that'll push things directly to you. She is literally getting full-fledged, all opinions, no uncut, no filtered, and it's just crazy. And she doesn't know who's on that other side typing it, but because she's already feeling insecure about what it is that she wants to be more than a pop idol. And it's just really just the men in this movie, and they're very subtle. Like, they are not outside of Mia, which is the stalker, like, because you don't even know his name. Like, outside of him, all the other men are just kind of like background characters that say comments, and it's just like, wow, that's crazy.
Comments too.
Yeah,
like, it's crazy.
Just judge. I mean, it's just judgmental to the level of like, but you're the one going to the show every time. You're the one who's buying all the posters. You're the one who's saying you love her. You're the one who wants signatures. All this stuff. So that was my ugly. But man, that was a great, good, bad, and ugly. Love how y'all was going crazy on that. That was cool. That made me. I was like, I step my game up on that one. So now this one, this one is a good question. I was thinking about, like, how did the creator of the movie continue to push the focus on Kagori, Mima, and Mima, the stalker, while hiding the true puppet master? And I'm gonna start off with Suds, and then I'm gonna go to Mr. Refine. Suds, what's your thought on that question?
Man, let me tell you, I think the biggest thing about this is that when they first show her at the show in the beginning, and they do a scan of the crowd, you automatically can see just by how badly drawn the stalker is that something's up with this kid.
Yep, off top.
So you are made off from the beginning to focus in on this guy. And then he's always showing up at the weird places, like when she was getting off the elevator.
Yes.
And you see him, and then he continues to stare at her in such a creepy way.
And they had his picture on the elevator.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's like, okay, this is kind of creepy with him, right? So you're automatically assuming this, right? And then it's like, when you see the website and you hear all these intimate details, and you're like, okay, who would know that? I mean, of course, someone who's following her, but there's other things that came up in certain conversations that you go, well, he wasn't there, so who would know this, right? But again, you're so focused on him, and the fact that she's starting to question, because she even said to herself, did I write this and I don't remember?
Yes.
And so you start to play into this idea that maybe she's like, trying to create a different persona, right, to create buzz, because she really wants to be a different person from a pop star, right? But then I think the other thing about it too is that as you start to see her losing touch with reality, it really becomes hard to say, well, who's really there and who isn't. And I think that part was where they really start to kind of blur the lines a little bit, but they're constantly keeping him constant. Like, a lot of other things were being kind of blurred a little bit, but that one thing was like he was always constant, regardless of wherever he was put in, wherever you saw him, he was constant. So I think that was their way of trying to focus in on that to kind of get you to like look at this and not look at that. But I think overall, I mean, there were things that actually show who the true puppet master was throughout the film that were said by this person, but I do think that overall they really did a good job in trying to make you look at him through the bad drawing, through constantly having him there at key moments. Like, those type of things is a way I think they did it to kind of keep the focus on him and her mental breakdown.
Mr. Refine, what do you think?
I'm agreeing with her 100%. I don't have no difference. I like how they kind of pushed that narrative of him being there, like when the dude got knocked off at the elevator, he was there. Like she said, his drawing was always very distorted. He was always very disfigured. So of course, you know, the focus is on him. Even if she has a performance, he's there. So they make sure that you focus on him being the possible issue instead of it being somebody else. And as far as the alternate person, the same thing applies. So it wasn't much of a difference really. And they did a very, very good job, because the whole time I'm watching it, I'm really thinking that this is the guy. I'm really falling into that stereotypical thing. This is the guy, but it really wasn't that case. So he did an excellent job on controlling that narrative and making me believe it was somebody else.
Like I'm telling you, I didn't think it was him, but I loved.
Yes, exactly.
No, I didn't think it was him, but I loved how it was always, even when he wasn't there, when Mima literally imagined that he was there because she saw his picture in the elevator about like, watch out for this guy. And he's always there and he's smiling at her, but he's smiling at her because he has this skewed, blinded, I love you. And like, she has no idea who the hell you are. And like,
isn't that messed up?
It's crazy. But that to me is like, that's what made this movie, like, this is probably like the best aspect, and why I give kudos to the creator, the director, all of that. Like, because it made you, even though you had those comments, if you listen to, and I had to go back and actually realize that Rumi was actually a pop idol back in the day. But I only got that because I was trying to find out the name of the male agent, because a lot of the males in this movie, they don't give them a name, and I love that. Actually, that was to me was a beautiful thing, because it was only the director of the movie they gave a name to, the CEO of the actual movie production or the show company, they gave him a name, but everybody else that was male, you did not have their name. You didn't know why.
I feel like it was because they were more of in power positions, right?
Yes.
Everybody else is more of an accessory type of a thing. Okay. So it's like, you don't really need to know their names. I mean, sure, you hear what they're saying, but they don't really make decisions here, right? So to me, I thought that was pretty interesting. I think the other thing too is, when we'll talk about a little bit later with Rumi, it's just when you start to pay attention to certain things that she said, how she responded to the rape scene, how she responded to the website, how she, reacted to her wanting to do acting in the first place. There were things that made you kind of like, she was really kind of like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like she was really trying to keep her, in this little box. And our main character, the pop idol, was like, I don't want to do that. And she's like, but, what about this? And what about that? And I'm like, it's really interesting when you think back on certain parts of it, if you were really paying attention. But yeah, it was interesting how, and I think the biggest thing for me with the puppet master Rumi was just that how she played on the people, on the insecurities of the pop idol and the stalker. Like she really fed into that, and that to me bothered my soul so much, because it was like, you knew exactly who you were setting up for this.
Yes.
Like you knew exactly what buttons to push.
Damn it, Cedric, going past and beyond the question.
I know, I'm sorry. But
that's how good this show was. No, seriously.
That was the most messed up part for me for the puppet master. She knew exactly what to push.
And that's what I love about it. So let's go on to the next question, since Sudz jumped into it, but it's not the one that were you thinking.
Yeah.
How did the lifestyle of being a pop idol exacerbate the paranoia of Kigori Mima? And I'm gonna start off with Ren.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of obvious. It's pretty much the same thing I touched on before. She's trying to live up to a certain persona, even though she's still who she is beneath it all. Whether she's getting the phone call from her mother saying, hey, I want you to be a singer still, because your uncle still buys 20 copies each time they release a CD. You know what I mean? Just all of that stuff. None of that mattered, because she still has this idea of who she wants to be and to live up to. So once she's trying to do that, and those certain events are happening, like the chat room, etc., it's really, really adding to her paranoia, is adding to her fear of, oh, what's going to happen next? Who am I going to become if this doesn't go right? And the whole time, let me be quiet. Anyway, she did that herself. I'm just going to say that, meaning that she allowed herself to be manipulated into this state. So if she would have turned off that chat room, got out of that website and stuff, and just focused on being, quote unquote, the actress instead of the idol from Cham and stuff, I think should have been just fine. So I ain't gonna get too much in detail. I'm gonna leave that up to Sudz.
Suds, where you at?
I'm gonna
drop
say
straight on you too. You saw her mouth. She was like, "I'm ready."
So I think the thing for me is how they portrayed the pop idols in this movie.
Yes.
They portrayed the pop idols as perfect little ladies.
Mm.
That we're here to make you happy. That's what we do. That's all we're here for, is to make you happy. And to me, it was like, okay, cool. All right. So you make these cheery songs. You're up there in these cute little outfits. Cool. Okay. All right, cool. But when she wanted to break off from that, right? The thing for me was it was already painted as a negative.
Mm-hmm.
So even before she saw the chat room, there was already chatter about, well, why are you leaving? You're leaving us. You are neglecting us. And she's like, no, I want to go pursue other things. It's not about you. So there was already that first level, right? I think the other thing about it is because she was struggling to establish herself as an actress, but then she hears of her two former partners, or K-pop partners, that they finally got on the charts.
Mm-hmm.
Something that they were never able to do as a trio.
Yeah.
That I think added extra pressure to her to say, well, damn, maybe if I stayed a little bit longer and was a part of that song, maybe I could have been bigger. So there was that. And then there's also this thing of the type of movies that she was choosing to do and how everybody was pushing for her to get more and more time. And she's like, can I just do this slowly? Let me work into it. They're like, no, you came from pop. You should be getting more lines. And she's like, okay, cool, I'll do it. But then they're trying to force her to get more airtime than what she was ready for. And then because people liked her because of who she was and people were interested in what she was doing, that forced them to say, well, let's push her more and more into the spotlight. So I think that whole idea of trying to keep up with the popularity that she gained as a pop star, and they were trying to recreate that as an actress, I think really put a lot of pressure on her. And there was always this constant pullback of, well, when you were a pop star, you didn't have to worry about this. Like, it was all these things always kind of reminding her of that. And that's why I think when her alter ego had popped out, she was dressed as the pop star, not as her, as a pop star. And it was there to always taunt her that I'm the real you. This, what you're doing, is not you. And that, I think, was
you're a slut. This is not what pop stars do. I mean, that was just that was vicious.
And that, to me,
your own self telling you that. Damn.
Right, and that, to me, I think really played into how society puts women when they start to go into their sexuality. Like, she may have in the beginning been very comfortable with doing that scene because she's like, it's just acting. But because of the fallout that came out after it, and then the pictures, I think that in itself made it where she didn't feel so comfortable with it, right? And the fact of how everybody was responding to it, like, oh my God, this is so jarring. And it's like, anytime there's and even if you don't have something as violent as that scene, but just the idea of sexuality. We see this with Cardi B, we see this with Megan Thee Stallion, we see this with every female rapper that's out right now. They start to rap about anything sexual, and oh my God, is it viewed as the worst thing ever. But we have seen in rap for years men talking about how they have been with so many women. No one really bats an eye at it. It's cool, right? And we see this even in our...
Let's just say it. Be vulgar, because this is unfiltered out here. They talking about suck my dick. They talking about how big my dick is.
Like, these things,
we just keep
all these things. Right, but that's the thing, right? But like, we all can probably name a few lines. Hell, we probably even rap along with it, right? But it's like that to me. There's just this double standard that comes with it, right? So when a Black woman, in particular, starts to come into her own, and even just, if you think about women, and in particular Black women, as she starts to come into her sexuality, it is viewed as such a taboo. And so I think in this thing, when she was wanting to become an actress, you have to do scenes that are more dramatic, that may be where you're a killer, and you came off as this pop star, but you're being portrayed as a killer. And you're like, that's so different. So I think for her, when she wanted to explore these other parts of who she was and really get into the craft, it was always second guess. It was always made to feel as though we're dirty. And so I think that that's what really helped to kind of build this paranoia of where she was like, am I doing the right thing? Or did I screw myself? And that, I think, was so sad to see that no one told her, you're doing it right, but maybe we should scale it back. Let you go at your own pace. Go at a slower pace. And they didn't do that. They didn't do that with her.
See, the industry is not designed for that. It's designed more of, we need you to be this right now. And I've never seen a case in any industry, movie, anything behind the scenes where somebody's going to say, no, you need to step back unless it's somebody's right-hand man or right-hand woman. Now,
Yeah.
the only thing I will say, I didn't see her doing lines of coke. I was expecting that to pop up.
I was expecting drugs to come up next. Seriously.
Didn't see it happen, but go ahead. Go ahead, D.
She was using the internet as her drug. She was using the chat room as her drug. But really, to the question as far as how the idol life exacerbated her paranoia, I mean, she was living alone. And one thing that really shook me was that you are literally being seen by people on a daily basis. Like, and it's not a matter of the fact, because there's a lot of artists, movie stars, entertainers that will be on the subway with people or the bus with people or anything of that nature. The difference is because, again, this could be my bias as a male, that she being an idol star and experiencing, especially in the beginning of the movie, experiencing these three guys who are throwing cans and trying to disrupt the show. And this is nothing new for her. And that's one of the reasons why she wanted to get out of being a pop idol, because it was like just exposed to all these men and their own grief or whatever it is that they have going on. It was like just being alone all the time, going up to the apartment. And a lot of people are looking at her because they know who she is. And they're not like, it's not it's not being respectful as far as like, I love your music, I love you as an artist. It's more so of like, oh, that's her. And like, I won't say anything to her, but I'll stare her down. And I know women go through this a lot when it comes to just them. And we're talking about, she wasn't like, I mean, she didn't have on like the biker shorts and anything like that, but they just, the way they looked at her, she didn't know if they're looking at her like as a prey, like I'm about to sexually assault her, or was it more of like, it's just like they just enamored with her. And so that was really crazy. And I think that played on it. And then on top of that, just this aspect of being ready at all times to please, as Sudz says, these men. And that's one thing that I think really just exacerbated it, on top of the choices that she made. But I won't go too crazy as Sudz is done, and as Ren has agreed to, as Mr. Refine has agreed to, because we don't got that much time. So I'm just going to start hitting out on these other questions. But that was a good conversation on that aspect right there. Now, how did Kaguri Mima fall victim to her own drive to be more than a pop idol? And I'm going to start off with Mr. Refine.
Yes.
Yes. Like, this is a hard question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always going to keep going back to the same theme, because if you watch it, listen, this is our reality, right? When it comes to being a star, you have to learn when to check out. She didn't want to. She didn't want to learn when to check out. She wanted the fame. She wanted it all. Now, maybe when it came to being an actress, she wanted to scale back possibly. But at the same time, she's like, you know what? Fuck it. I want this so bad. I'm going to push it to the next level. So none of that mattered. Everything went out the window. It wasn't a reason for her to scale anything back. She did it to herself. It's so bad to when the illusion came out. Who caused that? You did. Because like she said, I'm talking to you as if you are not the real you. I am. So she brought it along. She brought it upon herself, man. And I can't really get too much deeper than that. It is what it is.
Sudz, where you at?
I partly agree with you, but I also feel as though society as a whole kind of put her into that position where she has to. Because think about it. When they tell you to be career driven, right? If you are not seen, right? If you are not seen as a go-getter, then do you even really want this? And we all fall into that, because you're like, no, damn it, I do want this. I didn't go to school to do this, or I didn't put in these long hours just to have somebody else take this position, right? Or to take this job, right? So you fight for that, right? And the problem that I see with it is when you're coming at it from a minority status as a woman, or as a minority, when we think about people of color, in particular blacks, okay, you are constantly having to do more and more just to get the same type of opportunity. And even then, the door still gets slammed in your face. So I don't knock her for wanting to push herself to get to that point, because no one took her seriously because she was a pop idol. No one gave a shit because she was a woman, right? And so clearly she didn't have a support system anywhere. Her mother wasn't even sitting there checking in with her properly. She said because her uncle was buying CDs that you should be saying, hey, child, how are you? And you two have kids. I don't have kids. It's like if you see your kid pushing themselves, a part of you would say, I'm proud of you, but at the same time, let's check in. How are you doing mentally?
My mom
How
just
are you
did
doing
that.
physically?
My mom just did that yesterday.
And look at you, both of you are grown, right? And if you have a good relationship with your folks, right, or anybody that you see as a mentor or as a father figure, mother figure, they're going to check in on you, whether it's an aunt, uncle, somebody else. They're going to check on you, and they're going to ask that question, how are you doing? And you say, I'm fine. They're like, no, how are you doing? Yep. No one stopped to do that with her, right? But it was because society pushes this idea that if you do not push, you do not deserve it. So for me, it was like she fell into it because she had no one. And when she looked into herself, which was that other persona that was saying, you ain't shit. It's like that was what it's like. That's basically what it was telling her, right?
Man,
and it was
Sudz
taught
hitting
to her.
all cylinders a day. She hot fire right now.
Like, think about it. There were scenes where she was running after this other persona. Yes. And the other persona is so carefree. And that was what was so messed up for me. Like this persona was just carefree, floating through life, and she is literally struggling and gasping. She's running, like she's running off after something that's not even there.
That's a fact, Sudz. That damn Sudz. Drop the mic. Drop the mic on them, Sudz. Like drop. But no, that's what I felt as well. Like this whole thing of not being the village girl or the country girl who comes to Tokyo, becomes a pop idol, and like that's it. Like she wanted to be more. And I love the fact how she loved the actress who she was in the movie with, because she was like, she's a great actress. Like she can just turn it on and off, and I want to be able to do that. And I like the fact that she had inspiration. What I didn't like was the fact that she wanted to go so far away, removed from a pop idol. And that also ties into, again, the paranoia of being a pop idol because of the easy access that the men had at these shows and things of that nature to her and her group, Cham. But on top of that, it was more so of like, but then at the same time, I want to be an actress. And that actress, the movie, like the entertainment business, like going from pop idol to movies, like when someone sees a movie, they can watch it over and over and over again. Listening to music, they're hearing the audio. Sometimes you may have videos and somebody may watch it multiple times, but a movie, this is something that someone is literally sitting with you as the actress or actor for 2 hours, hour and a half, 3 hours. And they are really like analyzing you to a core. Shout out to the QC. Shout out to QC. What up with you, QC baby? But it was just crazy on that aspect. And I'll just leave it at that because Sudz just murdered it. So I'm gonna just let it be. So next one is how did the stalker Mima's skewed blind love for Kaguri Mima turn him into a pawn? Sudz, I gotta go with you. Let's go.
Listen. What always gets me is this idea that men, and this is when we talk about dating.
Get into it.
Physical aspect is always like people like to try and say that it isn't, but we all know. Okay, like it is something that is very present. Like the first thing you see, if you don't see them, it's usually because of something like your voice or something. But most of the time, it's because you see the person, and your body's going to respond right away, whether or not, I like this person or not. And to me, with the way that he was drawn, right, like Brandon had pointed out, it was very apparent that he was supposed to be an ugly guy. And we all know that ugly guys or short guys are always viewed as less than, and it's just true. Like this is the thing, like I saw somebody tweet that 6 feet is short. I'm like, how is that? And I'm 5'2". D, you saw me recently.
That's crazy.
Like, look, D, you saw me recently. You saw how short I am.
Sudz, you're shorter than Jazz. Shout out to Jazz, man.
Right?
You're an inch shorter than her.
Let me tell you, but it was crazy, right? Because I'm like, how is 6 feet too short? So, but like the way that they portrayed him is that he was supposed to be ugly. So he was already probably going through life not seen, no one giving him play.
That's a fact.
And he comes across this pop star who is like everything he's wanted. She's pretty, she can sing, she makes him feel good. And then he has this site where she's talking about her life and she responds to him. But we all know that's not her. But she responds to him. And because she's giving him attention, he feels seen. So to me, it was like that was easy. You played on his insecurities. You played on the fact that he's not really seen. And it was easy. It was, and you hear about this happening with men all the time. Any type of guy, like you hear about the guys who are like, I'm paying thousands of dollars for this lady's OnlyFans because she talked to me, or she sent me pictures that supposedly are just for me.
Shout out to the women who do on the OnlyFans.
And I'm like, you know what? And then people are like, I think this is terrible. I'm like, but why? Society has put women up on this pedestal that they are supposed to be these objects, right?
Yes.
And you can't get mad at her for playing off of these when the system was set up in such a way, right? Like, to me, it's like men want to complain about women viewing them as a bank account or just a wallet. And it's like, but you guys set it up that way. Like you set it up that way. You made it
that talk today.
Like you made it where
killing
women,
it right now.
Right? Like you made it where women couldn't be in these type of powerful positions for a long time. You couldn't have a bank account without a husband. You couldn't own land. You couldn't run a business. You couldn't do anything without a man.
Hold on, let me right there. My mom told me that she, like, when divorce papers, they was talking about like the husband has to sign it. This is my mom, and this is my mom. And she was like, she dragged my biological father and was like, you gonna sign these motherfucking papers. I was like, shout out to my mom. More fire. Anyways, Mr. Refine, go ahead and drop it. Are you done, Suz? I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm good. Bad. No, go ahead. Right. No, trust
Mr.
me.
Refine, go ahead and do what you talk.
Listen, she smashed on it, man. but listen, as she always does. Power to you, sister. I'm with you 100%. Fortunately, I didn't have that issue that Mima did.
Hey, man, come on now.
So with that, I understand what's going on. No, I'm not tall. I'm an average height person. But when you're talking about standards for men and women and stuff,
yes.
Men have a certain standard, and we know he was definitely subpar. This dude was like terrible looking. He was tall. If you paid attention, he was
like 6'5".
He had that.
Yeah,
he had that.
But besides that, he had nothing else going for him. So he had that, and then again, once he met the star that he was enamored and just idolized so much, she played into that, got him to do what she wanted, and it was over for him. But this happens with people who are not even stars. I know brothers who pay.
You get
talk
what I'm
talk,
saying?
Man. Talk.
Spit it.
Paying money for something that you can get for free. I'm just gonna say that. And it's crazy the things that people, and this is men and women. So let me stop. This is men or women. It's crazy the things that people would do to get attention from somebody that you might think is up here. Yeah, everybody put this woman on a pedestal. She wasn't that person. Yes. But if you have normal people who live like that, this is reality. So he fell into it, and she trapped him just like a spider in her web, and he got played, man. It is what it is. Happens every day.
And it wasn't even Mima that he was getting played by. Fact. It was Rumi. Spoiler alert. I should have said spoiler alert in the beginning of the show. But I mean, just to answer this question real quick, because we got so many questions, and it's probably gonna be a little longer episode just because it's like some this movie was really deserves that. But literally, he was not as bad as the director and the creator portrayed him to be. He was just a person, to Ren's point, to Sud's point, of this guy who just literally got no attention. Yes, he was tall. Dude was about 6'5", but because because of his physical appearance, everybody was like, he's a weirdo. He probably, because he never had friends they could talk to. I mean, even when he was on the computer typing as Mima, he was in the dark, like it's literally in the dark. Like just as a stereotypical hacker, like when you see those commercials, like the hacker is gonna get you. They got the hoodie on and they are in the dark just typing like this. Literally, he was fitting that stereotype. So for that, it was just like because he wanted to be closer to her, because he felt like Sud said when she acknowledged him, even though it was really just to say, hey, thanks. Like, I'm glad you calmed down the crowd so that they don't go into a riot or fight each other. Like he just was like, oh, she likes me, or oh, like I have a chance. And then you get Rumi, the true puppet master, to come and just feed him information and utilize his obsession with Mima to really just get him. And it was like, I was like, again, kudos to Rumi, like for real, hands down, my favorite character. My favorite character, even though I only found that at the end. So, spoiler alert. Let's move on to the next question because it gets deep. All right, where are we at? We got a lot of questions out here. So let's get to it. Now, how did Rumi utilize her experience in the pop idol world to isolate Kigori Mima, because she got isolated? She was like zone defense out here. Let's go with Mr. Refine. Talk about it.
I'm gonna put it plainly. She was a pop idol prior, so she understood the world. She knew exactly what it was that she went through. She felt those exact same feelings, guaranteed. So she utilized that, and she's seen these weaknesses and the vulnerability that Kirigo Mima had. She took advantage of it and used it against her. And if it worked, but it didn't work at the same time.
That's a fact. Suds, talk about it.
Man, let me tell you something. When she was sitting there in that room with her, when she told her like to help her get her computer set up,
oh man,
and they came across that site.
Yes, and she showed her how to get to it, though. She showed her how to click it.
Here's the thing. She shows her how to get to it, but then she tells her don't look at it because what people are saying out there. Now you already done planted, and I do mean planted the seed in this girl's head, and you already know she cares what people think. Fact. And she knew what she was doing. Like that to me, when she showed her that and then said, oh, don't watch it. I'm like, I have seen so many people in my life do this to other people that when I saw that, I said, I don't get a good feeling about this at all. Like
talk about it.
All. And I think that's because of my own personal experiences with something like that. So for me, it was like, okay, so you setting her up for something. I don't know what, but you setting her up for something, right? And I don't know if it was a way to get her to not pursue acting and to kind of push her back to be a pop idol, right? Or was it something more sinister, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, she really didn't want her to do acting. Nope. To me, it was like, you're doing so great as a pop idol, stay there. Do what you would do, what I couldn't do as a pop idol. Yes. And so to me, that's what I felt that she was doing at first, like trying to protect her from this. But when you start to see how this starts to unfold on and on throughout the movie, it's like, oh my God, this is terrible. So for me, it was just at that point, I knew something just wasn't right. That was the start. That was the start for me.
Just keep it plain and to the buck. Like
I kept it short this time.
Kept it short. Yeah, thank you. She just was like, she was like straight up, I want you to stay in this character that I want you to be. I want you to be this pop idol, and I'm gonna do everything to get there. I'm gonna murder people so that the ones that cross you is like they gonna know. And she literally took every aspect from like the connections of the where the photographer was, where the director of the movie, when he came into the set, when he came to the building, like. I mean, it was just crazy. Like, that's all I can say. Like, she literally used all the assets that she had from the experience of not being, because she got fatter, and they even drew her as like, oh, the eyes are a little off and all that.
It was so bad, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they drew her off. So she was like, oh, as I got older, I wasn't able to be the idol that you could be.
She was like Nima's older sister.
Old and weight. It was like the biggest thing.
And so she was like, she really was like, I know what these men want. It's literally, that's really what the pop idol for women and the K-pop thing for women too. In South Korea, it's all about what men perceive you as, so that men can keep giving you money to show up to watch you perform or talk or whatever the case may be. So
you got the male K-pop stars now, man. I mean, and I'll wait till we got that other question.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that because I don't even think that is women fans to male K-pop and pop idols. I think it's more the male fans to the male K-pop and pop idols that male K-pop and pop idols do not talk about. So let's go on to the next question. The next question: do you think Rumi was showing up as Mima, the pop idol, to Kirigo Mima the entire time, or was there a specific moment that Rumi made the switch? And I'm going to go with Suds on this one.
Yes.
Oh man. Right.
I'm asking some deep questions, so this is going to be a long episode.
I think honestly, that one's kind of tricky. Because of course, I think in one part of the movie where they actually show in the mirror or in that window, you see the differences, right? But I think the biggest thing for me is whatever Rumi was telling her, I think that's what fed into that persona, right? So it wasn't necessarily her directly, but I do think the things that she said or things that were coming up through that website is what was feeding into it indirectly. That's my thing. I do think that that's So in that case, I would say she probably was there the entire time, but in a very indirect way. That was my take on it.
Mr. Refine, that was a short one.
Yeah, I
See, I
agree with
kept
you
it
on
short.
that. I agree with you on that, but I'm gonna add this. When she had that scene and afterwards she went back to the room and stuff, and she was the whole thing came across your filth, but that was her talking to herself. So that was the mental breaking point in my mind, which caused that switch, and then joint came out the screen and it was over. So that's how I felt. It was always there. It just needed a time to come out for that mental that psychosis, pretty much, if you will, and that was it.
I didn't think she was there the whole time, but it had to be a transition from when Kigori Mima chased herself, Mima the pop idol, down the stairs to when to after that, where she supposedly got hit by the truck and was at Rumi's, or Rumi was there at her place. I think that's when that switch happened. So Rumi was just being very patient, very calculated, and really just was like, oh, she's going to the deep end faster than what I thought. And this is perfect because I can manipulate her to bring her back to being an idol. But it was the stubbornness and also just the vision of Kigori Mima, who wanted to be more than a pop idol, that Rumi was like, all right, now I gotta take the kid gloves off, and it's time to get to work. So that it was crazy right there. So the next question was Kigori Mima in Rumi's apartment majority of the time at the start of her mental breakdown, or only at the climactic end of the movie? And I'm gonna go with Sudz.
Man, that one there was a trip, right?
Yes.
Like I was like, you kind of sit there and you're like,
it made you scratch your head.
It did. And I was just like, oh, because like when you think about it, there were a lot of things that happened. Like I said, in the very beginning, where we show when she was living by herself, she had no one else, right? Like she was living by herself. But then all these things start happening, and you're like, okay, well, her mental break is starting to show. But I think honestly, it probably was towards the end, because I think in that case, like you said, she got her to such a raw, fragile state.
Yes.
That to make the final break, she's like, let me put her into an environment that I completely control. Because now she has no idea if she's in reality or not. And I think that to me is when she really did that, because that was like the final straw that broke the camel's back at that point. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Refine, what you think?
I think she was in there majority of the time, based upon the reaction of how everything went. And as Sud said, she made that switch at the right time, specifically getting her in a state that she can manipulate everything. And, she's watching over and over as the same thing pretty much plays over. And she's like, yo, am I here? Or did that just happen? Is this a dream?
Yes.
So I feel like she was there pretty much the majority of the time. And she did what she had to do when she had to do it.
Man, I'm gonna agree with Mr. Refine, but it definitely was the fish being dead where she started to wake up to the fact that she was not in her apartment. And that's, for me, is where I knew Rumi was there for a very long time. And she just didn't, Kigori she didn't realize it because of the stress she was putting on herself so much that when those fish were dead and they were alive and they were dead, that she was like, something's not right. And I was even like, do you even have fish? Like, I don't even think fish were even in your room. Like, that was it for me. So that was just crazy, but I'm glad we had to go on there. So did you have a different perspective of Rumi's reaction to the rape scene once you finished the movie? And how I'm gonna question this before I go to Suds is that Rumi got up and left, right?
Yep.
In tears, both of their eyes, tears, right? But as we watched as you watch the climactic end and everything, to me, I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't tears for Mima, what she's going through as a woman, as an actress doing a rape scene. That was because her as an idol and what you wanted the people to perceive as an idol, she literally just went to the no return. She literally just crossed that boundary line, and that's why you walked out. It wasn't because you felt for her. You felt for the idol. So that's at least my perspective. But I'm gonna give it to Suds. Go ahead, Suds.
I think it was kind of twofold because she herself was a pop idol, right? And so to me, when you think about a woman, there have been situations where you have seen or heard or been a part of something. And so when she saw her going through that, it was like it's a situation that she had to go through because she felt that she needed to. It wasn't where she felt she had a choice. And so I think that, like you said, one, it was now that pop idol persona is gone because you're no longer pure in the eyes of people. But I also think it was like she was thinking, you have been pushed to such a limit that now, like you said, there's no part for you to return, even as a person, even as a woman, right? So for me, I think that's probably why she started to turn up the ante a little bit more after that scene, right? Because she was like, maybe if I can get her to return a little bit faster, there might be some way to do some damage control. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if I could push her a little bit more to want to leave the space, then we could say it was just a one-off. You know, she didn't really want to do it, but she was forced to. There's ways that you can spin it. Damage control, right? A part of me feels as though it was a little bit twofold, that she remembers her days as a pop idol, what she had to go through, seeing this girl who's really trying to prove herself and has to get put into these situations, and the fact that this pop idol purity persona is gone. That to me, I think is just. So I think her reaction, I didn't get a different perspective from it. I felt as though she really did feel for that girl. But I think there was multiple pieces that were going into it, I think.
Agreed. Mr. Refine.
I'm gonna say there wasn't really much of a change. Suz kind of hit on it where she said that she felt like as a pop idol, she had to go through that at least to make that, you know, as we say, there's levels to this shit.
That's
she had
right.
To go through, you know, she had to go through these levels to ascend to be able to be whoever it was she was supposed to be. So I honestly don't feel like there was a different reaction from her. I think she felt like it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do. That's my thoughts on that.
Man, good point. So did Kagura Mima really get hit by the truck, or was it a hallucination? Mr. Refine.
Come on, man. You already know. Listen, hallucination. Like, you already know what it was. It had to be. The way everything was played out, the way that if she was hit by a truck, she'd be dead. Let's just call it what it is. She'd be dead.
Especially in Japanese anime, for real.
They would have showed the blood splattering all over the place. Hallucination. We just gonna say that. I ain't got to get into depth on that.
Suds.
I'm going to be devil's advocate here and say she actually did get hit by it. I mean, because a part of me is like, think about it. Wouldn't it be great if she actually did? And I don't mean it in the sense like, oh, it's gore, but in the sense of not only was she breaking down mentally, but now physically, she's screwed.
Yeah.
So now you really are a true prisoner to this woman who wants to literally break you to the point where you feel I have no other choice than to return back to a pop star lifestyle. That to me, I think makes it so much more scary that if she really ended up getting hit, that Rumi took advantage of that. It reminds me of that movie with Kathy Bates called Misery, where she like nursed a guy back to health. Yeah. And then when he started to get a little bit better and he was like, well, I think I can leave. She's like, nah, son, I'm not letting you leave. And she hobbed him, you know, that hobbing. And everybody knows the scene with the sledgehammer and the feet. Yes. Okay.
Yo, crazy.
That to me is what that reminded me of. And I just like, ooh, no.
I just don't think she got hit by the truck. I think that it was just that moment. I think Rumi actually saved her. And then she just imagined that it was over, but that's just my perspective. So let's move on. Do male pop idols go through the same type of traumatizing experience that female pop idols go through? And I'm gonna start off with Suds because she was ready for this question. She was ready.
I think they do. Because there is a persona that you're supposed to put off. So when you think about some of the pop idols that we have had here in the U.S., you think about Usher and some of the others, right? So he was like R&B, a little bit of pop, right? Or some of the other pop stars that we've had. There's a persona that you're supposed to be a sex symbol, right? You're supposed to be sexy. So you can't be fat. You always have to be this like very like suave, smooth type of a guy, right? Like you always have to be on. always have to be on. And that to me, I think puts a lot of pressure on guys, right? And I think that there's this persona that you have to put off that then women are idolizing. And so regular men out in the world are like, well, how do I get to that? It's like, I got to look like him. Maybe I can get to that, get women to look at me, or I have the same type of money that he has, right? So it's like this idea that you have to go through these things to kind of keep up this persona. But at the same time, you think about some of these pop stars, especially in K-pop, you hear like how they're pushing them to the extreme extents, and a lot of them are committing suicide.
Yeah.
And you go, well, why is that? Why are you guys doing it? So like they have strict diets, strict things, like strict itineraries that they're supposed to do. They have to be a certain size. I mean, you look at K-pop and how these guys look. You know, they have them wearing makeup.
Yeah,
right?
lots
They
of
have
makeup.
them like lots of makeup, right? They have to have 6-packs. Every last one of them has a 6 or 8-pack. Every last one of them. Right? And then there's always the same persona in every single group. There's the real pretty boy. There's the rapper. There's the bad boy, right? Because the rapper can be more edgy. Then you got the bad boy. Then you got the quiet one. Like there's all these different personas, and every single K-pop group has every last one of them. And when you look over here in America with our pop stars, right?
Same thing. Shit.
It's the same thing. But usually it's like he's a single solo artist, so he fits that, and that's what he is. Or like if they have boy bands, because boy bands back in the day, everybody knows the boy bands from back in the day.
That's right.
Whether you had 112 to your NSYNCs and Backstreet Boys, there was always the same thing that was with it, right? Always the same thing. And it's like women, you know, like they say, well, these women have to live up to these physical standards, and it's like true, but men have the same thing. There's the same persona. I mean, look at the actors when they did 300.
Yeah.
The amount of workouts that they did for that, and every woman was like, "Oh my god!"
But all of,
I mean, it looked great.
Yeah, but all of them couldn't even. But all of them couldn't even get a full 6-pack. So some of that was even sprayed on.
Facts.
Because
you get what I'm saying?
Because their body, because no matter how much they worked out, their body image, their body just didn't function to where you have
they don't have
exactly. So it's like if you and like it's amazing when you look at how society puts, like, look at the models, tall, right, very athletic, built, right.
Pounds.
You get what I'm saying? Or like the men,
or less,
or if they're on the bigger side, like if you think about The Rock, right, and how big he is, like over the years, how big he has gotten. Like he was already a tall guy and kind of muscular, but when you look at him in later years, you go, dude got really jacked, right? So it's like there's these personas that we have of men that, you know, you have to have, like if you don't have the long hair, then you're bald. But facial hair, well, we want clean, like you clean shaven. Like you hear a lot of women who force their soon-to-be husbands to shave on wedding day.
Sudz dropping that heat. So,
I mean,
good.
I mean, we're going to talk about these types of pressures. We have to be very aware that just like with women, there are certain types of pressures that are put on men, where if you're ugly, if you have money, you're good to go. If you're good looking, you can get away with a lot of things. If you're good looking and rich, oh dear God, you are untouchable.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can do whatever you want and people are going to just be okay with it. And I think the other thing too is that there's always this idea that if you're larger in stature and height, that means that you're more respected, and that you might be a little bit, you know, well endowed in certain other areas, which we all know that can't be true for a lot of people. But then if you add on a bit of race, we all know how Black men are sexualized and fetishized in a certain way. We all know what the whole stereotype that goes with Black men.
Fact.
Okay. And we also know that there's also the stereotype with white and Asian men, which again, everybody knows it, but come on. Right. So there's this idea that you can't be sexy if you're short. You can't be sexy if you're an Asian guy. And for Black men, you can't have emotions. You're just there. You're just
you can't have a small penis as a Black man because you
can't. And then people laugh at you, or you're like, if you show any type of emotion, you're considered weak. So it's like all these things that men. Right. So it's like a lot of these things that are put out there by society that, you know, we have to acknowledge that men have these same things. You know, it may be very different from women, but there are a lot of categories that do overlap. You know, physical pressures, emotional pressures, stuff like that.
Mr. Refine.
Yo, she summed it up. Like,
Sudz is on full cylinders
yeah,
today.
I love it. I can't really say much. I mean, it is what it is. You've had not even pop stars, just celebrities in general have committed suicide. People that we assume to be happy. So
Yep.
you can take that and you make it what it is. We are unhappy, whether it's a male or a female. When it comes to being viewed as always being a certain way as a celebrity, it's not always true. So yeah, it's the pressures are both.
And I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna end it with like, man, there's probably a lot of K-pop and pop stars who have to deal. I just think about B2K with Raz B when he was talking about the
Oh,
stuff with allegedly with Marion and the whatever the
Marcus
manager
Houston,
Marcus
and
Houston and not a Marion, excuse me, Marcus Houston and the manager who
Chris
I forgot
Stokes.
his name. Yeah, Chris Stokes. Like that is something where it's like I
they don't want to
think
talk about it.
yeah, I think more of that happens with men, as far as not female fans, but male fans. And I think it just happens greatly. And again, it's back to that persona that Sudz is talking about that you have to keep up. Like you don't have, if you explain that, then you're gay and that's derogatory for you as a straight man, or oh, you let this person, I mean, even the whole thing with Terry Crews and how he took that and took it to Capitol Hill, but a lot of people were like, wait a minute, like that's Cruz, that's different from someone who has women who've been sexually assaulted and like the person is bigger than them, or even if they fight back, they can get abused more. So like that is a whole conversation. And I understand what he was attempting to play on, but the reality is like it's not that simple. And especially for K-pop or pop stars who you're talking about droves of men, and we're not talking about men that consider themselves gay or a part of the LGBTQA plus community, but literally are like, oh, I'm a straight man, but for some reason I like you. Like it's that's I think is really untalked about and needs to be talked about. So
The one thing I will add is like what's going on with Lil Nas X right now, and how he's being very open with his imagery and his music videos. And I think the biggest thing for me that I've taken away from that is the biggest thing I saw was someone talking about the fact that, well, since he's showing gay men, he needs to educate on HIV. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
Because
sounds like the baby talk right now.
I'm like, because if that's the case, then Usher. But I'm like, the thing that gets me is like, if that's the case, then Usher needs to educate on herpes. We need to talk about the fact of other male artists who are straight who need to communicate on other things, especially when you think about Future and talking about how do you raise a child.
But see,
we won't
get into that, says, because that means looking at yourself in the mirror. And I think a lot of times to tie into this movie, before we get to our last question, to tie into this animated movie, it's like the fans put a reflection of what they want to be, what they ascertain to be to these entertainers. And reality is that these entertainers are people. Back to Mr. Refine and what he said, like you got to look at them as people, understand that they are not these Adonises or these gods that you want to put them on so that you can make yourself feel better for not dealing with your insecurities or your issues.
I was about to use a Biggie line, but it's a little too graphic, so
But you know what? But that's the whole point of music and movies, right?
Yeah.
People view it as escapism.
Yeah.
Well, look at this. I mean, we got real deep in this show. Last question. How does the movie reflect the society currently when it comes to celebrities? And I'm going to start off with Mr. Refine because, Sudz, you've been taking up all the time.
Oh, my God.
I think I answered that question pretty much, saying that first off, we put them on a pedestal, right? We already know that. We put these men and women on pedestals. And when we do that, it makes them believe that they have to live to a certain lifestyle. They have to be viewed a certain way. And in reality, like, in the words of Biggie said, they bleed just like us.
Yes.
So you are still human, whether you are rich and famous. You still go through the same issues I have. You still got the same 24 hours in a day that I do. So we put pressure on them by saying, oh, we want you to look like this. And you have millions of people telling you in your comments and stuff, oh my God, you're so sexy. Oh, you look so good. I wish I could do this and that. So it makes them mentally start thinking, and this is how it has to be 24/7. I realize when you get older, you don't do the same things you do, and eventually you're not going to always be at the top. Somebody's going to take that spot. So it's tough, man, and it's hard. You have to know how to navigate, and like I said, you got to learn when to check out. And this is exactly why sometimes I relate it to myself. I don't do certain things often. Like I could be posting up beer stuff every day, but I don't, because I don't need the comments. I don't need validation of, yo, this is this and this is that. I can just do what I do in my own world, because I don't live on Instagram. I don't live on YouTube and Facebook. I live in reality. So celebrities don't have that. They may not have that luxury, but I think they do. So everybody needs to take a step back sometimes.
Look at Mr. Refine dropping the mic on you, Suds.
Listen, I'm gonna tell you this. I think depending on what generation you are a part of, that will help you to know where you can fall back onto. And I think that with celebrities, they have always been in a different category, so to speak, right? And now that we have a new type of celebrity, so like most people would be celebrities because they were sports, movies, music, or political figure. Now we have this other category of influencers, right? Like when you think about these different groups of people who are coming up because of content that they created, right? Content. And we all know brands, you build a brand, and that's what people will always associate you with. So I think that society and what this movie was doing was just really illustrating the extremes that people have of celebrities. So that when you see this persona, they do not see you in anything else. It's just like when you watch an actor in a movie. And you think about actors like Lawrence Fishburne, when he did the movie about Tina Turner called What's Love Got to Do with It? He played Ike to a T.
That's a fact. Talk to Ike and everything.
Right? Or if you think about, what's his name? Danny Glover, when he did Color Purple. There's certain characters that when you see them, you go, ooh. Or you think about Cersei in Game of Thrones.
Love Cersei.
However, people would see Lena Headey and they wouldn't even talk to her at Comic Cons because they really hated her. And it's like, no, you hated the character, not her. It's like the fact that people are so one-sided, right, about this makes me say that this movie wasn't such an extreme representation of it. Like it really reflected what we see in society, that people latch on to these personas and can't let go. So to me, I always thought that was pretty, like I thought that was pretty interesting because you see it even now. But it also speaks to the fact these people are really good at those personas. They're really good at, like Denzel Washington when he did Training Day.
My guy.
Or we did the airplane pilot movie, like that one was fire too.
Flight. You know, when you think about these type of movies, right? Like people who play these movies, or like if you ever see Bronson, where you had Tom Hardy who played that character. He actually met the guy who was the most famous British prisoner ever. Like when you watch these type of movies and you see these people get into the characters, or like Heath Ledger, how he did Joker. You get stuck in this idea, like, man, I thought, Heath Ledger played all these like cute little characters in previous movies, and then he plays this really dark role, and you're like, what the fuck, right? Like you really are drawn into that. So I think in this case they really were playing up on that, but it's not too far from the truth. Like it really isn't. And then I think for women, if you're not always a sex symbol and you've been viewed as that, then it's like society just throws all kinds of trash on you, which is like insane to me. It's like, I can't have an off day. No, okay. My bad.
By the way,
I ain't got nothing to say.
By the way, I had Heath Ledger in my notes too for part of my ugly. But anyways, go ahead.
I ain't got nothing to say. Let me turn this off because I ain't even gonna comment on that. This has been probably one of the longest episodes.
We did.
But this is definitely something. I mean, there's so many questions, and I really wanted to make sure that we got to all of them. So when you're watching this on the replay, excuse the long conversation, but really it's a very in-depth conversation. Suds brought nothing but fire. Mr. Refine brought nothing but fire. And I was just sitting here drinking a lot of beer, and I'm having a great time. So, again, next week we got it going down as we usually do. Join us every Friday. Like, we really consistent with this, and we're really making it happen. If you don't know, if you haven't been to Craft Kings and you're not ordering the Scarlet right here, you need to get that. coming up soon. We're working on that.
It's coming up soon.
Yeah, this is 12.1. It's definitely smooth. Definitely something you want to let warm up at times. You know, getting that nice, 70 degrees and get all the different flavors right there. You're gonna get a lot of lemon peel.
Do you feel like it's syrupy at all?
No, not at all. Not at all. But again, we're gonna talk about that offline. This is Black Nerd Fridays. Catch us every Friday. It's going down, and I can't wait. Last but not least, before we get off here, I can't wait for The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf is going down August 23rd. I'm so excited about it. We're gonna review that though. We're gonna give y'all at least a week before that, because Seth is like,
do that in September.
Like, just give him one day. I'm like, Seth, relax.
Nah.
But we'll catch y'all on the next episode of Black Nerd Fridays. It's Sudz, it's Mr. Refine, and I'm your host, Neal. I appreciate all of y'all. Love. Shout out to Brick for always supporting us every day, all day.
Brick.
Hashtag high ABV life. It's a real thing. And we will catch you on the next episode of Black Nerd Fridays. Peace. I'm going to drink this last bit of beer.